Hello, I'm Gwen Hill from Pine Ridge Baptist Church Sunday School Department, ladies class, and we're studying the book of Revelation. So we are in the 8th chapter of Revelation, and we are studying the trumpet judgments. We are now in the part of Revelation who is really talking about the wrath of God. I am a pre-trib, which means pre-tribulation Christian, and that's the way I believe, and that's the way I'm going to teach, that the church, all Christians have been removed from the scene through the rapture. There are Christians on the scene now, but they are Christians who became Christians after the rapture. They missed the rapture, okay? John is in heaven, in a vision in heaven. He is in the throne room, and he is watching this play out. Jesus is giving us a vision into the future so that we will recognize what is happening leading up to the tribulation, and so that we can understand the things that are happening in our world even though we're not there, so that we can be endued with a fervor, if you will, to reach our fellow humans on this earth and impress upon them they don't want to go through this. We want them with us, so they need to get to know Jesus Christ. This is what this whole book is about. Forgiveness, and how much God loves you and wants you in heaven, and what extremes he will go to get your attention, so that you will realize you need him. Okay, so the 7 trumpets. We have 7 angels, each holding a trumpet, and each time that they blow on the trumpet, some malady happens on earth, some judgment, the wrath of God. The first 4 trumpets are things that are happening to the earth that are causing mankind to sit up and look and pay attention, take notice. Your world is being judged by God. So let's go to we are going to start on the second angel. We found out the first angel sounded his trumpet in verse 7. It says, hail and fire mixed with blood was hurled upon the earth. My class and I, we discussed the word hurled. It is not a very passive word. It evokes, in me at least, a lot of emotion. It is with dynamite. It is with authority. That's what hurled means. Not like you dropped or like you pitched. You hurled it at it. Okay? A third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees, and a third of the grass. That's so easy to read. Think about what it means. Okay? A third of the earth was burned up. In the United States, a lot of times we have wildfires that afflict places in our United States, like California. They have wildfires that destroy so many resources. We have wildfires in the Midwest. We had the Great Smoky Mountains caught a fire a few years ago. It is very traumatic. Imagine this amped up, so that this just looks like a little bonfire, what we've been dealing with. Can you imagine the panic that the people who live next to these fires are going through? Can you imagine the resources that are being poured in that? Can you imagine the fatigue, both mentally and fatigue, for those people who are trying to fight these fires, and these people trying to organize the help? And it's not just the trees, it's all the green grass. You're talking now about the food getting scarce, okay? If it burned up the grass, it burned up the crops that was around the grass too, did it not? Where does your agriculture come from? What's going to feed the cattle and the chickens and everything else that we have in our line, in our food chain? It says a third, the whole earth, a third of the earth. Now, whether that's a third of what I know, a third of what you know, or a third of the United States and a third of China and a third of England or a third of, or if it's a concentrated third, we're not told. But it's going to be devastating, whatever it is. It is going to knock the earth back. I mean, it's not just a third of the green grass, it's all the green grass. A whole season is, at least a season, is going to be lost. That means all the hay that they feed the animals, that they bed the animals. Bad. Okay, we start our study this morning on the 8th verse. A second angel sounded his trumpet. And I want you to notice every time John writes down the words something like or as a, what he is telling you is, John says, I live here in 1st century AD. I'm living in the very 1st century. I don't have the vocabulary to tell you about things that are going to happen in 2022, 23, 24, 25, 26. I don't have the vocabulary to do that. I have never seen an airplane. I have never heard, nor have I seen, a tank, a helicopter, a rifle. The military in my day walk, and we're concerned about the sandals that they have to wear and the armor that they use, what is effective and what is not. We fight with knives, with spears. We fight with bow and arrow. We fight with one man killing one man at a time. We don't recognize, I don't recognize, John says, but I'm going to tell you to the best of my ability to tell you when I see these signs, what it makes me think of and how I can describe it to you that maybe you can grasp from your side what I'm seeing. So he says the second angel sounds his trumpet, and something like, this means John said, it's not what I'm telling you, but this is the best way I can convey it over to you. This is what it makes me think of when I see this event. He said, something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea turned to blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. This must have been horrifying to John. He said, I'm seeing something like a huge mountain. Think of his words. Now you think, use that descriptive. Close your eyes for a second and picture what he's telling you. A huge mountain, all ablaze, that was thrown into the sea. My husband and I had the great honor and privilege of visiting Hawaii a few years ago, and we chartered a helicopter to fly over one of the active volcanoes. It wasn't splurting out over the top, but you could hover over the opening at the top and look down in. Then last summer or so, via television, we watched one of those volcanoes erupt. There was fire everywhere, bright red, turning to orange. I mean, flames shooting way out and spitting lava out everywhere. Big chunks of red hot stone. And it made a trail down to the ocean, and then even we got to see that under the tunnels, the lava tunnels. Here we went out to the ocean, and you look back, and here's this red hot liquid filling the ocean. And that was one volcano, not even actively erupting when we went. Now listen to John's words. Something like a huge mountain, ablaze. It was thrown into the sea. Can you see it exploding? Remember Mount St. Helens? There was things strewn everywhere. And a third of the sea turned into blood. Well, if it's a third of the whole sea, you've just killed all the whales in that sea and all the other dolphins and other mammals that are in there. You've killed all the fish in there in that one third, and they have blood in their bodies, and they've been ruptured, blown apart. You also have a third of the seas, or the ships. It is estimated that any one day you want to look at our oceans, there is approximately 50,000 commercial ships on the ocean, plying the ocean at any one time. So think of a third of those being involved in this and the human life that is lost in this. It's not only this, but that explosion and then pouring into the sea. What else could that cause? Tidal waves? Huge. To judgment. Then verse 10. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on the third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. The third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. The third angel blows his trumpet, and a great star. This word comes from asteroid, from the Greek, means asteroid. Some blazing like a torch. This is NIV. Blazing like a torch. Well, a torch burns at one end and has a string behind. It is picturing for you a meteorite or an asteroid. What's the difference between an asteroid and meteorite? Meteorite. Size. Size. Okay. As a meteor hits our atmosphere, it gets so hot that it begins to glow like fire, and it has a tail behind it as it comes into our atmosphere and burns. Our Earth is made up of 70% water. So most of the time when meteorites or asteroids, when they hit the Earth, they hit in the ocean. The few times that they hit in the earth, they make huge craters and change a lot of things. The dust that they kick up when they land, that they displace, bad. And did you notice what it's affecting this time on the earth besides just where the damage to the earth would be where the meteorites or the asteroid landed? Look at your water. And this is the fresh water. This is the water from springs and rivers where you get your water when you turn on the tap. Okay? The meteorite, the asteroid, was not made of wormwood, but they called it that because when it landed in the water, the water became very, very bitter. Wormwood was used in John's day and time, was used to rid your body of parasites. You got the bark of the wormwood tree, and you ground it with a mortise and pestle until it became an oil. And then you took that oil and you mixed it with a little bit of water or with some other food product, and you took it and you rid your body of parasites. A very medicinal, good thing to have. However, going to be a little graphic here. You're speaking to a nurse, okay? So if you take something to rid your body of parasites, the way the body more than likely is going to get rid of those parasites is through your bowels. What happens if you have to drink wormwood water? Is the only water you've got. Yes, it tastes horrible, but without any water, you're going to die of dehydration. But what's going to happen if you drink this water, the wormwood water? You'll be all right for a little bit. And then that wormwood will gather up and it will cause you to have diarrhea. And then what happens with diarrhea? You get stomach cramping, you feel miserable, and you get very dehydrated, and the end result is death. And look what it says. It says a third of the water turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that became bitter. It says many people, doesn't give us a number. Later, they're going to start giving us numbers, but this is horrible. What if you couldn't trust your water system? The body can't go very long without water. We can go without food for quite a while, but we need water. Our own bodies is made up of 70% water. Some of the most difficult patients that I had to take care of were people that were dehydrated enough that their brain was not functioning correctly. And that's what's happening. Then verse 12, the fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, a third of the stars, and a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night. All right, let's break that down just a little bit. He broke it down that the sun was struck, so it's going to be a third less light come. This is reminiscent, isn't it, of the plagues in Egypt when in Exodus. A third of the darkness in Egypt's plagues. Egypt was in dark, but where Israel was camped, it was still light. So I don't know if this third of the darkness means that a third of the earth is going to be dark, or if the whole earth is going to be a third dark. And think of it this way. It could be this way. We have 12 hours of daylight, generally speaking, during the day. Let's say it's daylight at 7 a.m. and it's dark at 7 p.m. All right, that would be a third of that would be 4 hours, would it not? So maybe morning starts at 9. Daylight starts at 9. But it ends at 5. What's that going to do to your crops? They're not getting as much sun. They're getting 30% less sun than they had before. What is that going to do to the navigational things that our people on the sea and the air use for navigation? Because you see, it says the stars are darkened by a third as well. The moon is darkened by a third. It's going to be harder to navigate. It's going to be so dark because a third of the stars are not shining either. So go in a room with no windows or with a window that has a heavy curtain on it. Turn the lights off and close the door and sit in the dark and meditate what your world would be like if you were living through this wrath that God has poured out. Would it not bring you to your knees and say, God, I don't know what's going on, but I need you. I need something here. This is not working for me. So this is tragic for them. This is tragic for them. In verse 13, as John watched, he said, as John watched, I heard an eagle that was flying in midair call out in a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because a trumpet blast about to be sounded by the other three angels. This word eagle also can mean angel. Okay. So as I watched, I heard an angel, I'm going to say that, who was flying in the midair, going throughout the earth and calling out in a loud voice. And I think if his warning is going to be effective, I need to hear him in my language. You need to hear him in your language, very much like Pentecost. I think the whole world understands what he's saying. He's saying, if you think this is bad, hold on, because it's going to get worse. There's 3 more coming that's worse. Turn to God now while you have the opportunity, because it is going to be worse. And he's telling the inhabitants of the earth. That doesn't mean just Jerusalem and Israel. That means the United States as well. That means Britain and Australia and Japan and China. He is saying, there's more to come, and it's not going to be pleasant. The last ones, the 5th, 6th, and the 7th trumpet, they're changing now. These are getting to the end point. This is getting to where God is saying, I am about ready to stop giving you chances to come to me. You know, when Moses talked to the Pharaoh, I think it was the first 4, may have been 5, but anyway, when he first asked for his people to be free, the Bible says Pharaoh hardened his heart. God is telling you, you hard-hearted people that are left on the earth, what more do I need to do to have you turn to me? It's hard for a hard-hearted person to change their mind, isn't it? All right, chapter 9, verse 1. The 5th angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and the sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. And out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth, and they were given power like that of scorpions on the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes. During these days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle, and on their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings, are you hearing these was like or as? Again, he's trying to find the words to tell you, okay? And the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails with stingers like scorpions, and their tails, they had the power to torment people for 5 months. And they had a king over them, the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek is Apollyon, that is destroyer. The first woe is past. 2 other woes are yet to come. Let's go back and break this down a little bit. Revelation 9:1. The 5th angel sounded his trumpet. These are the trumpets that are sharing the wrath of God. And John says, I saw a star that had fallen from the sky. That word fallen could also be interpreted as descended. Okay? From the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. Some commentators think this star is Satan himself because he fell from heaven. He was thrown out of heaven, and so he fell from heaven. I have a little problem with that because Jesus himself has the keys to the abyss, and I can't see him giving them to Satan, but maybe he did. Another camp says that this was an archangel. We know 2 of them was Michael and Gabriel, and we know Michael was a warrior. Maybe Jesus handed him as a trusted archangel, as a servant, to go and unloose that gate, that door, that lock. Doesn't really matter that much because we just need to know that the abyss was opened. What is the abyss? Do you remember when Jesus crossed the Jordan, not the Jordan, but the Galilean Sea, and he went across and he talked to the demonic at the Gadarene. Remember him? He was possessed by demons. He couldn't even tell Jesus his name. The demon spoke for him, and when Jesus said, "What is your name?" the demon responded, said, "My name is Legion, because I am many." He knew who Jesus was. He called him Lord. And then he begged Jesus. He said, "Don't send us to the abyss. Don't send us to the abyss. I'm bad. I recognize I'm bad, but whoa, they're really bad in the abyss, and even I don't want to be there. Please don't send us to the abyss." So what did Jesus do? Jesus honored his request. What did he do? What did Jesus do? He cast the demons out of the man, and he sent them into the swine. The swine received these demonic beings into their body, and what was the first thing they wanted to do? Commit suicide. But they were inhabited and had to do what the demon was ordering their lives, and just to get away, they plunged off of the embankment into the sea and drowned. Look, these are demons. When the abyss is opened, smoke, acrid smoke, from a gigantic furnace. That's what, see that word like there? Like. John says, I don't know how to describe it except when you open up a furnace, how the smoke will billow out and the heat will come forward to you. He said, and you could, it was so dense that it even darkened the sun. The sky was turned midday, and the sky was turned dark from the smoke from the abyss. And out of this smoke, he didn't say something like locusts or something as locusts. He knows a locust. Locusts are in his day and time as well as in ours. He very well knew what a locust looked like, and he looked at those and he said, those are locusts. Just like those men who were with Jesus talking to the Gadarene knew those were swine. Even after the pigs had taken possession, they knew they were swine. John knows these are locusts. So locusts came down to the earth, and they were given power like the scorpions of the earth. These are different locusts. These are locusts like John has never seen before, so he's going to try to tell you about them. Well, this sparked an interest on my part. I wanted to know, what's the difference between a grasshopper and a locust? And then what's the difference between a locust and a Revelation's locust? Let me share a little bit with you what I found out. Grasshoppers are generally brown, gray, green. Okay? They are solitary insects. You don't see them in clusters. They usually do their own thing. The only time they seek is when it's time to mate. They don't bite humans, and they don't sting. If you ever said a grasshopper bit you, it was because you must have put your finger in between their jaws and rubbed, because their teeth are grinders, or what they use for teeth. Grind, they don't pierce. Their thorax, or their belly, is soft. It's easy to squish them. You can step on them and squish them pretty easy. They don't have a leader. Solomon wrote in one of his books that the locust has no leader. They don't have a leader. They do their own thing. Where are they located? We all think mostly in rural areas, which is true, but they can be found all over the world. Everywhere but Antarctica. They don't like the cold. They don't like the real cold, okay? They hatch from eggs. They are usually shed, they have an exoskeletal, and they shed that 5 or 6 times during their lifetime, and they get wings after the 5th shedding. Their wings are 4 parts, 2 long and 2 short, and they can fly. They can fly. The normal length of a grasshopper or a locust is 0.39 inches to 2.7 inches. In some species, the male vibrates their wings or they rub their wings with their legs to make sounds that attracts the female. They usually die in cold weather, but the eggs will survive. In Israel, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, all of those eastern countries, the typical lifespan of their activity or the phase of the locust is 5 months. 5 months. We've heard about these are only going to last. This season is only going to last for 5 months. They said it twice in these scriptures, remember? Okay, let's talk about the locust. How do you get a locust, first of all? What's the difference between a locust and a grasshopper? A locust started out as a grasshopper. Picture the eggs of the grasshopper, if you will, and then think about the butterfly, how it metamorphosed from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Well, these eggs, if there is extreme dryness followed by extreme wet, followed by extreme dry, followed by extreme wet, those extremes trigger a change in those eggs, and that egg is not a grasshopper anymore, it's a locust. Different colors, usually they're brown and yellow. I saw pictures of some, and a lot of them have speckled yellow on their heads. So I don't know. And they like to swarm. They're social. Locusts like to swarm, and they devour crops, and they ravage agriculture. They are herbivores. They usually don't bite humans, nor do they sting. Their thorax is soft. You can squish them. They also have no leader, even though they swarm. They are predominantly in areas that have fluctuations of weather that gives them that extreme dry to extreme wet. One generation of locusts can multiply 20-fold every 3 months. They're migratory, and they can ride the wind. If they need to use their wings and fly, they can fly up to 62 miles in a day. If they're riding the wind, they've been known to go as far as 185 miles. 1/2 mile swarm of locusts that descends on agricultural crops such as wheat, barley, corn, whatever. They can devour enough grain that would have fed 35,000 people in just a few days. Okay, so now let's talk about the Revelation locusts. John says they have something like a yellow crown on their head. So let's say that they are all yellow-headed, and they have pale faces, and they have teeth. They don't have grinders, they have teeth. And like those teeth are pointed like lines. It's fearful. Would have been terrifying to John. And they have long hair. Don't know why they chose to have long hair, why God wanted them to be that ferocious. Women's hair is supposed to be alluring. I don't know. They are told by God that they have limitations. You're not to eat any of the grass, nor any of the trees, nor any green thing. This is totally different from the way the grasshopper and the locust usually works. Usually subsides or sustains themselves. They still don't bite, even though they have teeth like that, but they do sting. They have developed a tail that has a I'm going to have to work on my computer here. Excuse me just a minute. Okay. Sorry about that. About to lose power on me. All right. So these Revelation locusts did not come from eggs. They came straight from the pit of hell. They came from the abyss. Their wings sound like military equipment. like a battle going on. What are some of the things that John would equate the military sounds? He would have equate wooden wheels going over rock roads. The creak of leather, the clanging together of swords and implements of that nature. He would hear the stomp of men as they walked, the jangle of all of the equipment they tried to carry. All of that makes him sound, it's roaring. It's like a huge army is what he's hearing. And they're given 5 months. So God is really working on these to make them something extremely fearful. John is very scared of these. And he says, the first woe is past. The first woe. This is what you're going to deal with this first time. These are going to come just as God said they would. Think about it when it says the tails have stingers like scorpions. These people, when they're stung. By the way, did you notice who's not going to be stung? The 144,000 Jews that God has set aside to spread the message to the people. He is protecting them. From the wrath of God, He is protecting them. He is not protecting them from Satan, but He is protecting them from the wrath of God. The things that God is sending down, they are protected from. They are marked on their forehead. We don't know what the mark is exactly. Some think it'll be a cross. Some think it'll be an X. Some think it'll be something that we can't even think of that denotes the name of God on their forehead. And these demons are intellectual enough to know, either they recognize, they know to look for it, they know what it is when they see it, and they know that they are refrained from touching that person. They have a king that's giving them orders. And did you notice that when they talked about in verse 11, it says they have a king over them, they had as king over them the angel of the abyss. Who is that? That's Satan. Whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon and in Greek Apollyon, that is destroyer. Why did John put that in both the Greek and the Hebrew? Why didn't he just tell us one or the other? Why did we get both names? Think. Because this wrath was going to be for the whole world, for Jew and Gentile alike. This is a worldwide wrath that you're looking at in this fifth angel. This is the first woe. These people that are stung by these supernatural locusts, these demon-possessed locusts, are going to want to die. The pain is so terrific that the only way to get away from it is to die, and they will try. They want to commit suicide to get away from it, and God won't let them die. Death has been suspended for 5 months. So if you jump off a bridge trying to kill yourself so that you don't have to suffer from this sting anymore, now all you've got is a broken up body, and you still are suffering from the stings. Our next time we meet, we'll be talking about the 6th trumpet. I'll see you then.